The Athletic. Subscribe today.
Sure, you'll teach her how to drive a car, then use Greenlight to power her independence with crash detection with 911 dispatch, family location sharing, and emergency SOS alerts. Invest in your best investment with Greenlight.
Well, it looks like we're watering it down, which is not acceptable. The 218 passed a bill that would make sense.
Coming up next on Scripps News Live, the fight over the debt limit still underway at this hour. With just a week to go until the U.S. could hit default. We're going to have an update for you from Washington straight ahead. Plus this.
So today, I have the honor of introducing my nominee to be the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Charles Q. Brown, Jr.
President Biden with a history-making pick for the next Joint Chiefs chairman. We're going to introduce you to Air Force General C.Q. Brown coming up. And a first-of-its-kind abortion trafficking bill now in effect in Idaho. What it could mean for people there, including doctors trying to care for their patients. Scripps News Live begins right now. Hey there, hello to you. Welcome to Scripps News Live on this Thursday afternoon. It is now 3 p.m. in the East, 12 p.m. out West, and I'm Veronica De La Cruz. At this hour, Republicans and Democrats still at a stalemate over the debt ceiling. The U.S. now just a week away from possibly defaulting on its debt for the first time in history. Now, Congress is getting ready to leave for a holiday recess. The House has nothing on the books all next week, but lawmakers could return with just 24 hours notice if negotiators do reach a deal. The Senate is planning to return on Tuesday, just 2 days before that potential default deadline. Congressional correspondent Nate Reed has been keeping a close eye on things for us and joins us now live from the Capitol. So, Nate, what is the latest on this debt deal as of today? The clock is ticking here.
It is, Veronica, and the House of Representatives took its final vote of the week before this planned recess earlier today, meaning that they won't be back until there is a deal on the table. They will return with 24 hours notice. Now, President Biden just gave an update at the White House regarding the status of these negotiations. He says congressional leaders, including Speaker McCarthy, have agreed that the U.S. will not default. Take a listen.
Speaker McCarthy and I have had several productive conversations, and our staffs continue to meet as we speak, as a matter of fact, and they're making progress. I've made clear time and again defaulting on our national debt is not an option. The American people deserve to know that the Social Security payments will be there. The Veterans Hospitals remain open, and that economic progress will be made, and we're going to continue to make it. Default puts all that at risk. Congressional leaders understand that, and they've all agreed there will be no default. And it's time for Congress to act now.
And just a reminder about what would happen if the U.S. were to default. That could mean Social Security payments would be delayed. The possibility of military salaries could also be delayed or not go out at all. Interest rates could spike and the economy could be thrust into turmoil, possibly even a recession. There are far-reaching implications of the possibility of a default. At this point, though, members of Congress, especially Republicans, have been defending their decision to leave on this recess, given that they've already passed a bill that would raise the debt ceiling by $1.5 trillion. The issue that Democrats take with that bill, the Limit, Save, Grow Act, is that it would also cut spending by roughly anywhere from 20 to 23% of government spending. Democrats have made very clear that they're opposed to that. Right now, Republicans are saying that they will return, though, with 24 hours notice. Here's Representative Chip Roy of Texas.
You guys are going out of town, though, right now.
Well, we've got the bill that's been passed. We've passed a bill. And by the way, this has been on the schedule, and this is Memorial Day week. And by the way, our guys are staying and working, and we'll come back in at a 24-hour notice. But the Senate,
they took their Memorial Day last week.
Right, they're gone this week, heading up into the point of when needing to do negotiations while we're trying to work through it. And we're the ones who've already passed a bill. What have they done?
And lawmakers skipping town, even without some sort of fix to the debt ceiling crisis on the table. At this point, negotiators are continuing to work with the White House. There are several reports that they are apparently inching closer to an eventual deal with President Biden and congressional Republican negotiators.
All right, inching closer, but they really are cutting it close here. I mean, we know that several lawmakers have said that they will come back with 24 hours notice, but they aren't scheduled to actually come back, until 2 days before that June 1st deadline. So what happens here, Nate? Because once a deal is reached, there's still a process that they have to get through in terms of turning an agreement into an actual solution. What is that process, and how long is that going to take?
Well, Veronica, let's game it out. Let's say that a deal is reached in the next 5 minutes. Again, no indication that that is right now a possibility or on the table. But if a deal was reached, lawmakers would still have to write up the bill that would raise the debt ceiling. That itself is going to take time. At that point, then, the House Republican majority has a rule that they have to give their members 72 hours to read bills before they take a vote into them. That's going to put us at least at some point next week, even if a bill were to be written and a deal were to be reached at some point soon. Only then is the House of Representatives able to be called in with 24 hours notice to vote. It's then up to the Senate to take it up and vote in it. Remember, the Senate's returning this coming Tuesday. All of this, though, has to be done before the U.S. could default, according to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, as soon as June 1st. It's an extremely tight timeline, and there really is not room for anything to go wrong here.
You're right about that. Nathaniel Reed reporting live from Capitol Hill. Nate, thank you so much for bringing us up to date on this. In the meantime, President Biden nominating Air Force General C.Q. Brown Jr. as the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. General Brown currently serves as the Air Force Chief of Staff, the military branch's top officer. Now, if he is confirmed, the Pentagon's top two positions would be held by black men for the first time ever. Let's get you right out to White House correspondent Haley Bull, who's live for us right now in Washington. All right, Haley, we know that this nomination was expected, but let's go ahead and dig deeper and take a look at the background of General Brown and why the president decided to pick him.
Veronica, General Brown comes from a line of military service, both his father and grandfather serving the country. President Biden made his formal nomination today, describing General Brown as a, quote, top-notch strategist and a leader in military innovation, saying that he has gained respect across the forces and also with U.S. allies. Now, as you mentioned, he's currently Chief of Staff for the U.S. Air Force and previously commanded the Indo-Pacific. He was Deputy Commander at U.S. Central Command, just to name a few of the very lengthy lists of positions he has held. He was commissioned back in 1984, graduating from the ROTC program at Texas Tech. Now, it's not often you hear personal anecdotes from military leaders, but President Biden revealing today that the general, quote, smoked a mean brisket. But going further into his service, recalled at one point in the early 90s in his service when General Brown's F-16 caught fire. He was forced to eject. He landed in the Florida Everglades, and that is how he earned his call sign, quote, Swamp Thing. Take a listen to how the president describes the general's experience.
No matter how complicated the mission, from helping build and lead the coalition now of more than 80 nations strong to counter ISIS threats in the Middle East, to positioning our Air Force for the future in the Indo-Pacific, General Brown has built a reputation across the force as an unflappable and highly effective leader.
And his nomination comes as the U.S. works to counter China, compete with China, to modernize its military, deals with Russia's war in Ukraine, in the effort to help aid Ukraine's defense, and at a time of evolving technology that the military is contending with. And as you mentioned, his confirmation would be historic, the first time black men held both top positions at the Pentagon. The president noting the history of this, noting that it would be the 75th anniversary this year of an integrated force as well. Now, Brown was also known for speaking out ahead of his last confirmation hearing after the murder of George Floyd and talking about the bias that he has also faced. He had a unanimous confirmation at that time, but facing confirmation this time, it also comes. Senator Tommy Tuberville from Alabama has also held up military confirmations, taking issue with the military's policies on abortion. The White House has urged him to step back from that, accusing him of, quote, political gamemanship. Now, General Brown, if confirmed, would replace General Mark Milley, whose term ends in October. Veronica.
All right, Haley Bull reporting live from the White House. Haley, thank you so much. Well, today marks 3 years since George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His death sparking nationwide protests for police accountability. A bystander captured the moment an officer placed a knee on Floyd's neck for about 9 minutes. Floyd could be heard gasping for air and saying that he couldn't breathe. Since then, the 4 former officers involved were all convicted and sentenced for their roles. Now, last year, with Floyd's family by his side, President Biden signed an executive order that applied key elements of the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act bill to federal law enforcement. But in a statement today, he called for more to be done on the state and local levels, urging Congress to take up police reform. Straight out on Scripps News Live, crime and justice correspondent Jamal Andres will take a closer look at police accountability and where things stand since George Floyd's death. That full report is straight ahead at 5 p.m. Eastern. A painful yet poignant day in Uvalde, Texas. Families gathering Wednesday to mark 1 year since the Robb Elementary School massacre. Now, in the days and weeks following the shooting, the country mourned the 19 kids and 2 teachers killed. But then many people moved on. And unfortunately for the people of Uvalde, there is no moving on as they relive the trauma nearly every single day. Now, earlier, the Texas state senator who represents Uvalde, Roland Gutierrez, joined me on Scripps News Live to talk about gun legislation and how people in Uvalde are doing 1 year later. Here's a part of that conversation. I wanted to go ahead and start right here by asking you how you, the community of Uvalde, are doing and what marking 1 year since the shooting means to you. What's been on your mind?
You know, it's obviously just been a tremendous journey, over this course of this last year. I mean, we've all been traumatized on some different level. Certainly the families that lost children are just destroyed and broken. Last night in Uvalde at the 1 year anniversary, I had a mother that had lost a child, just bury yourself in tears, telling me how tired she was and how, just the loss of it all. And we're all in that space. For my particular issues, it's just looking at all of the failed body cams. You had to see all of the failure that happened, all of the damage that occurred to those poor little babies in that classroom. And so each and every one of us kind of brings a different perspective here, but I don't want to in any way compare us to the loss that these families are grieving with. And certainly, young ladies like Caitlin who lost friends in there, it's just a different kind of situation. But all of us, it's just very, very hard. And I want the country to understand how hard and difficult all of this is.
I know that you are a Democrat in a Republican state. Governor Greg Abbott's message has remained constant. He doesn't believe in a lot of the restrictions that you've been calling for. But here's the thing, Texas voters seem to agree. He was reelected shortly after the shooting in Uvalde. A couple of things right here. Do you believe there's any hope for any sort of gun reform in your state? And the governor at the same time has called for more mental health care access. Have you seen any of this come to fruition? Have there been any changes when it comes to being able to access mental health care in your state?
Well, let's cover a couple of things. First off, Republicans are in favor of the gun safety solutions that I'm talking about. 76% of Texas voters want to see common sense gun safety solutions. 66% of Republican voters want to raise the age limit specifically. All of those other 2 measures, they poll above 50%. So clearly Abbott's not listening to them. The previous story that you issued out earlier is $5 million he gave to the district attorney to dole out psychiatric care. Look, I'm a lawyer as well. I wouldn't know the first thing about doling out psychiatric care. I asked Abbott to give $2 million to a clinic that had the only psychiatrist in Uvalde, that had space, that had therapy facilities there available to them. He wouldn't do it. These people are living in on another planet. They want to be able to do things in a way that simply don't make sense. They don't make sense for most Texans. We have to cut through all the crap that we're getting in Texas from this governor, because we have to find solutions that are truly going to affect us in a positive way. The money that we put in this session towards mental health is simply not enough. We'll still be at the bottom end as far as mental health funding in the United States, and we'll still get similar outcomes. And we'll get similar outcomes in rural Texas because there just is not enough of an effort or a concentration in this in a right manner. We've got a lot of work to do.
Senator, I have to ask you then, and I don't mean to interrupt you, I don't mean to step on your words, but I want to ask you why it is you do what you do. I mean, you said that 76% of voters in Texas want to see common sense gun laws passed. Nothing has been done since Uvalde a year ago. What is it going to take? What can you do to convince your colleagues on the other side of the aisle that this cannot and shouldn't ever happen again?
Well, look, I've tried honey, I've tried vinegar, I've tried all of it. I'm not going to stop. I think that what has to happen next is voters need to wisen up and realize what's happening in this state. And what's happening in this state is we're going to have more chaos. We're going to have more gun violence. We're going to have more people getting killed because loose Republican gun laws are granting more and more access to guns to anybody and everybody that can have them. You can walk down the street with an AR-15 in Texas, and a cop can't even pull you over and say, hey, what's up? That isn't normal. That just isn't normal. It doesn't happen in most states. We've got to come back to some normalcy. And reasonable-minded people need to start fighting for their rights. And they need to start fighting for their constitutional rights of life and liberty and pursuit of happiness. Because where we are right now in Texas doesn't make sense. So why do I do it? You know, I'm going to keep doing it. I don't know. Maybe I'm hitting my head against the wall, but I'm going to keep doing it and keep talking to people until these people change their laws or we vote them out.
Senator Gutierrez says that he wants to keep fighting for Texans and their children so a similar tragedy never happens again. You can watch my full interview online right now at scripsnews.com. Coming up next on Scripps News Live, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis formally announcing his bid for the White House. Who else could join the race for the Republican ticket? Plus, what can we expect from this year's hurricane season? We're going to break down today's predictions from NOAA after a quick break.
A Scripps News exclusive interview with the nation's top hostage negotiator.
We're going to go into battle with the Russians here and have this negotiation and see what we can get done.
Go behind the scenes of bringing Americans home. Tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Scripps News Tonight.
This year, Americans will spend $41 billion on auto repairs.
That's right, billions with a B. Why is that number so high? Because cars break down. Your vehicle is going to end up in a shop like this too, and if it's no longer under warranty, you're the one who has to pay the bill, and it could cost you thousands of dollars. That is, unless you call CarShield. With a plan through CarShield, administrators will pay for those costly repairs directly to the mechanic of your choice, including dealerships. That means you get protection on major parts and systems like the engine, transmission, electrical systems, and more. Plus, 24/7 emergency services for flat or damaged tires, lockouts, dead batteries, and towing at no additional cost. And there are even rental car options to keep you on the road.
I've been a mechanic for 35 plus years now. I've seen thousands of repairs over the years. My happiest customers are the ones that come in who have some kind of auto protection policy that's going to cover the repair that they wasn't expecting anyway. I feel great about recommending CarShield to everybody I see.
CarShield has a rich history of dependability, reliability, and success, and has been featured on leading networks like ABC, CNN, Fox News, and more. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company.
My mom told me to call CarShield, and I saved $5,000. You should always listen to your mom.
As soon as my car broke down, CarShield jumped into action, and I had my car back within days.
I've been with CarShield for close to 7 years. I have 3 vehicles covered, and I saved close to $9,000.
I called CarShield and saved over $5,000.
Yes, CarShield is a good value. Every plan through CarShield comes with a price lock guarantee, which means no matter how many repairs you need, the price you pay today will never change for as long as you cover your car.
Call now and save money with your price lock guarantee. It's not a matter of if your car will break down, but when. Call CarShield now before it's too late. Call 800-287-5264. 800-287-5264. 800-287-5264.
How can a photo become a vibrant part of your home? When you go to tryfracture.com and print your images directly on glass. Get beautiful depth and clarity on a sleek, frameless print that's easy to hang and looks incredible in any space. Go to tryfracture.com now to save 20% on glass prints.
I don't get paid until next week.
I got you. I'm Dave, and I can spot you up to $500 of your future money instantly.
Up to $500 instantly? What else is in my future?
A new couch. Only!
Get up to $500 instantly with Dave. For over 100 years, this light has shined. Through generations of Americans, this light carries on.
Reporting from Ukraine, Scripps News.
A beacon of the free American press. Reporting the facts, telling the whole story. This light illuminates, it informs, and now shines even brighter. Scripps News.
Super Typhoon Mawar cut a destructive path across Guam. The powerful storm battered the U.S. island territory with hurricane-force winds of 140 miles an hour and wind gusts up to 165 miles an hour, which is the equivalent of a Cat 4 hurricane. It knocked out power, uprooted trees, ripped off roofs, and flipped over vehicles. No deaths or injuries have been reported. Now, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released its annual forecast for the Atlantic hurricane season today, and NOAA is predicting an average season with about 12 to 17 named storms. The agency says 5 to 9 of those storms could turn into hurricanes, with as many as 4 strengthening into hurricanes of Cat 3 or higher. Bernadette Woods-Plackey is the chief meteorologist at Climate Central, a nonprofit news organization that studies and reports on climate science. Bernadette, thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, Bernadette, your reaction to NOAA's forecast, is it in line with what Climate Central is saying, or do you think that climate change has been making forecasting hurricanes more difficult?
I think there's a few things to unpack for that. This is, I think, what most people expected for this year, because we have some competing forces. And we've got warmer than average temperatures around a lot of the Gulf right now, which tends to give that extra boost for our hurricanes when they do form. We've also got a lot of activity coming off of Africa. But at the same time, the last few years we were in what's the La Nina pattern, and we're flipping to an El Nino. And the reason that's significant is it really changes our global weather patterns. And La Nina tends to lean more toward higher activity in the Atlantic basin. When it flips to an El Nino, that tends to limit some of the activity. So you've got limitations from the El Nino forming. At the same time, you've got higher activity coming off of Africa and warmer temperatures. So between the two, an average forecast was expected. Now, I do want to point out, though, it only takes one, right? And when we get the actual storms with climate change, we're seeing them intensify more rapidly and coming with a bigger punch when they make landfall.
All right, so you are saying that you do see stronger storms, but how does today's forecast compare to maybe what we've seen in previous years? Are we seeing predictions for these more dangerous storms to form? Would you say that this is similar to years past and you've seen a report like this before?
So when we talk about climate change, we are looking at those longer term trends, whereas this is one snapshot of 1 year. And this year in itself, as we're saying, average expected, but could be a couple of really powerful ones in that average. I mean, we're looking over an entire season, right? And if you get a couple of those that really explode and make landfall in highly populated areas, that is damaging, and that's the kind of damage we've seen building up over time with climate change. Not necessarily more of these storms, but when they're forming, they are rapidly intensifying closer to land, so it's less time to prepare. When they're making landfall, they're bringing more heavy rain with them and a higher storm surge that's going farther inland. So there's a couple of things going on. We're looking at this snapshot of 1 year, but the longer term trends do lean toward more impactful storms when we get them.
All right, so what you're saying here is that climate researchers believe that the longer term trend is that we're going to see these more dangerous storms in the future. Let's talk about Hurricane Ian for just a second. Hurricane Ian made landfall last fall. It caused significant storm surge. Take a listen to what researchers had to say.
We know ocean gets warmer, more water evaporates. That drives the storm, so there's more energy available. That's why they will be stronger. We know for sure that the ocean is rising because we're making the world warmer, ice melts, water expands because it's warmer. So the water level goes up, storm comes, pushes the water on shore, we have a higher storm surge.
Bernadette, I wanted to ask you specifically about climate change, the impact of climate change on hurricane season, and whether or not the danger is great enough in some areas of the country now that people should no longer rebuild after these dangerous storms pass through.
That is a very loaded question right now. The conversation of managed relocation is going on in some communities. It is not a comfortable subject. It is not one that people who are so connected with their communities really want to get into. So it's a really tough subject. However, we are seeing some communities hit time and time again with these high pushes of water. And if you go back to 1900, there's a great case study here. Now, again, this is a long time ago. Our cities weren't built up the way they are now. But there was a hurricane that made its way into Galveston, and it was in 1900. That's what forced a lot of people to relocate to Houston and made part of what made Houston what it is today. But it's an interesting story in a different time and space of how an impactful hurricane did create this behavioral change. So this is a loaded topic. People are really having to consider. I can say personally, I've met a couple of people who have relocated in Florida specifically because of this threat.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I definitely hear this topic come up a lot in conversation, but quickly I wanted to ask you, what is the likelihood that a city get hit either in the same season, get hit twice in the same season, or, you know, within a few years apart?
It is hard to quantify exactly for each city what that could be, but what we're seeing with climate change is all of those risks increase. It doesn't necessarily mean that we've seen a trend where one city is going to get it time and time and time again, but we're seeing in the data that when it does make a landfall, it's coming with more water, it's pushing that water farther inland, it's creating more damage. And on top of that, we're also seeing these compound these disasters, not just the landfalling storm, but there are a couple of examples in Louisiana the last few years where they've gotten so many in a row that it takes out all of our infrastructure, electricity, and then you're left in this baking heat afterwards. So that's an indirect cause of a landfalling storm that's creating a secondary disaster because our heat's on the rise, and then we need air conditioning if we don't have the electricity to support that. So we're seeing compounding factors even outside of the direct risk of a hurricane.
Yeah, you're right about that. And it's just so scary when you think about it. Bernadette Woods-Plackey with Climate Central. Bernadette, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So to come on Scripps News Live, restrictive abortion laws have some questioning whether they should stay or move out of the state. Up next, why some people are saying they no longer feel safe to live or even practice medicine in some states.
Hi, I'm new to Medicare. How do I know if I'm eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan?
Great question, Claudia. If you're on Medicaid, newly eligible for Medicare, losing coverage, or moving, call now to see if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan. Just call 800-571-0138.
I'm already on Medicare. Don't all Medicare plans have the same benefits?
No, John, they don't. Certain beneficiaries may qualify based on income verification to add up to $164 back to their Social Security check every month. Our team of licensed insurance agents are standing by to see if you qualify for a plan with additional coverage and benefits. Call the number on your screen to check your eligibility to enroll. Just call 800-571-0138.
I didn't know there were plans available in my area with additional benefits.
Yes, Martha, there is. Medicare Advantage plans offer all the benefits of original Medicare, plus additional benefits. And with a Medicare Advantage plan, you have access to a network of doctors and specialists. Call the number on your screen to check your eligibility to enroll. Just call 800-571-0138.
I'm on a fixed income, and I want a plan that fits my monthly budget.
Well, Rick, did you know that with Original Medicare, there's no limit for what you pay out of pocket for the year? With Medicare Advantage, plans have a yearly limit, and once you reach that limit, you pay nothing. If you're on Medicaid, newly eligible for Medicare, losing coverage, or moving, call now to see if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan, even if you called last year. Just call 800-571-0138.
I don't want to worry about any unexpected medical costs. I'm going to call now.
That's great, Linda. There's no obligation to enroll. The call and Medicare benefits review are free. Just call 800-571-0138. That's 800-571-0138.
Develop a gorgeous app with Fiverr. You'll need your product manager, QA engineer, and Omar, a Fiverr freelance product designer with an impressive number of orders who will join your team from home. Smart and cozy. Expand your team with a Fiverr freelancer.
How does Klein Spector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein Spector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein Spector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein Spector.
Sure, you'll teach her to drive a car, then use Greenlight and teach her to save up for her own car. Mowing lawns and getting paid. Navigate the world of earning, saving, and investing together. Invest in your best investment. Greenlight.
Hey there, welcome back to Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica De La Cruz. It's about 30 minutes after the hour now. Here are some of the other stories that we're keeping an eye on for you today. A federal judge has sentenced Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes to 18 years in prison for seditious conspiracy. It's now the longest sentence so far for anyone charged in the January 6th Capitol attack. The judge says Rhodes presents an ongoing threat and peril to the country and to democracy. Prosecutors had asked for a 25-year sentence. Well, FBI Director Christopher Wray is set to meet with House Oversight Chair James Comer soon. Comer has been pushing for an investigation into President Biden's business dealings. He says a whistleblower claims Biden was involved in a criminal scheme with a foreign national during his time as vice president. The White House is calling the claim an unfounded, politically motivated attack. And the FDA is giving its full approval for Paxlovid. The antiviral helps treat mild to moderate COVID symptoms in adults who could develop severe infections. The drug has been administered for months now under an emergency use authorization. With a full approval, doctors could prescribe a longer course to treat possible rebound infections. The Paxlovid pill is currently taken over 5 days. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster signed a new bill today, and it bans most abortions around 6 weeks of pregnancy. That bill is likely to face legal challenges. It's the latest in a string of strict abortion measures taking effect across the Southeast right now. Starting July 1st in North Carolina, most abortions after 12 weeks will be banned. A 6-week ban in Florida could also take effect if the state Supreme Court upholds the current 15-week ban. And to the western U.S. now, Idaho recently becoming one of the most restrictive states for abortion access. Several laws have been enacted over the past year, including a near ban and restrictions on minors seeking abortions out of state. Scripps News national political correspondent Alex Miller spoke with Idahoans who are saying that these measures are making it harder to live and work in that state.
As a woman, I'd feel safer in a different state.
Over the last year, Idaho has enacted several laws chipping away at the right to abortion care, including a ban on the procedure after 6 weeks, except for reported rape or incest, or a life-saving measure.
Physicians are literally having to ask hospital attorneys, hey, is a 20% chance of death high enough that I can act in this situation? And in many cases being told no, because these laws are so restrictive or so vague in some cases, and sending women home until they get sicker. This is incredibly reckless and it's dangerous.
It is now illegal for an adult to help a minor get an abortion across state lines without parental consent. It's a felony that comes with up to a 5-year prison sentence, even if the adult is helping a child raped by a parent. They can also be sued by the parent or guardian. Dozens of states require parental involvement, but this is the first state to criminalize not having a parent involved.
It's a completely just butchering of human rights to say you can't do this.
If women are going through those lengths to cross state lines, it is for their own benefit and for their health. for the betterment of them, their family, everyone around them.
This month, a district judge upheld an injunction preventing prosecutors from charging doctors for providing abortions in emergency situations. That same judge is expected to decide another case that would allow the criminal charging of doctors for referring patients to out-of-state abortion providers. Republicans say the bill is about child protection alone.
The parents need to know when their child has an issue with that. You don't need people kidnapping children and taking them outside the state. So I think that it was a way to protect not only the children, but the parents and the knowledge the parents have of what's going on in their child's life.
The bill passed overwhelmingly in both the state House and Senate. That new legislation is having a real trickle-down effect.
We have seen story after story of OBGYNs who are facing tough decisions about this community that they live in, that they are so tied to. Is it even safe to practice medicine here anymore under the scrutiny of having state attorneys general sitting on my shoulder in the exam room, and some of them are making the difficult decision to leave?
At least one hospital in the state, Bonner General, has discontinued its labor and delivery services, and studies looking at maternal mortality are being shut down this summer. Dr. Jack Resnick, president of the American Medical Association, says medical students applying for residency this year are less likely to apply for programs including OB and emergency medicine in states like Idaho.
We're going to have a workforce crisis where patients in these restrictive states are going to have a tougher and tougher time finding doctors.
The Guttmacher Institute, a reproductive health organization, says women in the state could be forced to travel between 222 and 429 miles for care, depending on how far along they are. Idaho is one of 13 states where the procedure is effectively banned. Erbely says these laws won't stop people from seeking care.
Abortions are going to happen no matter what. They're just going to be really unsafe.
The Idaho trafficking bill could set up a broader war with neighboring states like Washington or Oregon, some of the most lenient state for abortion laws, where legislators are currently working on shield laws for doctors who work in reproductive health. Alex Miller, Scripps News, Moscow, Idaho.
Now, this new law also sets up a debate between attorneys in the state. If a county attorney chooses not to prosecute, the state's attorney general can step in and overrule the local prosecutor. After a rocky start to his announcement, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is officially part of the race for the White House, and that brings the number of Republicans fighting for the party's presidential nomination to 9. And we're watching several big names who could still decide to join that race. Scripps News national political correspondent Joe St. George has an update now on where the 2024 race stands and where things could go next.
It's been a busy week for the battle to live here at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
I'm running for president to lead our great American comeback.
Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis announcing in a Twitter video his presidential campaign Wednesday night, although his announcement did include around 20 minutes worth of Twitter technical difficulties.
I choose freedom and hope.
South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott didn't initially promise a big Twitter rollout, but on Monday, he did get in the race.
Both candidates join a growing field of Republicans challenging former President Trump for the nomination. For the moment, Mr. Trump is enjoying a comfortable lead over Florida's governor. On the Democratic side, President Biden is only facing long shot challenges from activists including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Marianne Williamson. So where does the campaign go from here? Well, traditionally, once the candidates get in the race, focus shifts to debates, and there's already controversy when it comes to those events.
That's because it's unclear if former President Trump will actually show up at the first debate in Milwaukee, scheduled for August. Scripps News Milwaukee's Charles Benson has covered Wisconsin politics for decades. He gets us caught up on why this matters.
But we do know it will be our first chance to look at this growing GOP field of candidates side by side as they all make their case on why they want to be back here in Milwaukee in July of next year to accept their party's nomination.
Democrats, well, they have debate drama too, mainly because it looks like President Biden won't be participating.
That has frustrated his challengers, who are hoping debate moments could catapult their campaigns. John Cossack with Scripps News Cleveland caught up with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign manager, Dennis Kucinich, a former presidential candidate himself.
Does he have a path forward when you have an incumbent who does not even want to debate?
You know, that's really going to be up to the American people.
Of course, the biggest political events of the summer may be happening in Iowa. Conservative fundraisers like the Roast and Ride will take place next next weekend. The Iowa State Fair is in August. One looming question is, how big will this presidential field actually get? Former Vice President Mike Pence may be the next likely candidate to join the race. He sat down with Scripps News' political director, Andrew Rafferty, this week.
I do believe that different times call for different leadership. Republican primary voters are going to choose wisely. We're going to choose the right standard bearer.
As far as President Biden, his campaign continues to stress he is well positioned to win again. However, his polling suggests he may be vulnerable. A recent average of polls found 41.7% of the country approving of the job President Biden is doing. 53% disapprove. Joe St. George, Scripps News, Washington.
And still to come on Scripps News Live, you might be seeing a new face on Sesame Street. After a quick break, we're going to talk to the minds behind Filipino character TJ and what he means for representation for Asian American and Pacific Islanders. And quick reminder right here, we'd like to hear from you. You can always call us on our Scripps News viewer hotline. That number right there on your screen is toll-free, 1-833-4-SCRIPPS. Again, that is 1-833-472-7477. You can share your comments and your story ideas anytime.
Do you spend hours maintaining your gutters? Save that time with LeafGuard's maintenance-free system. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS. Mesh filters sit on top of your gutters, building up debris and eventually clogging. Then they need to be cleaned too. Honestly, your home should have been built with LeafGuard gutters. LeafGuard's wraparound hood deflects debris and keeps water away from your home. The one-piece seamless system is strong, 20% thicker than average and built to last. Plus, LeafGuard is guaranteed to never clog for as long as you own your home. Right now, get a complete LeafGuard system for only $99 down, $99 a month, and $99 installation. You'll also receive a $100 Visa gift card with a free gutter inspection and in-home estimate. Damage from clogged gutters can cost you thousands. Never worry about clogged gutters again. Don't wait, you've still got time. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS today. That's 1-833-2-GUTTERS.
You're looking pretty good, Mr. Johnson. But we need to take some x-rays today.
That's all.
Yes, x-rays are expensive, but the front desk said you recently enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan with extra benefits that now cover today's x-rays and cleaning costs.
Wow, okay.
Well, Medicare Parts A and B do not cover your routine dental coverage like cleanings, fillings, or x-rays. Yes, you have a Medicare Part C plan, commonly called Medicare Advantage. Medicare Part C plans cover everything in Part A and Part B, plus extra benefits like dental, vision, and hearing.
Wow. That's great that my plan includes dental coverage that helps pay for these costs.
Yes, Mr. Johnson. A Medicare Part C plan could include dental coverage that pays for routine dental exams and teeth cleanings, dental x-rays, fillings, tooth extractions, root canals, dentures, implants, and crowns.
If you're losing coverage, moving, or new to Medicare, call to speak with a licensed insurance agent. You don't get a plan with these benefits automatically, so it's always good to call to see if there's a plan with extra benefits available in your zip code. If you don't have a Medicare Part C plan, call now because there may be plans available with additional benefits that are simply not covered under Medicare Parts A and B, like routine dental coverage. In fact, 24 million Medicare beneficiaries do not have any dental coverage. Here's the good news. If you're on Medicare, you can call even if you called last year. We will check to see if there is a Part C plan available in your area with additional benefits. Remember, you don't get Medicare Part C benefits automatically, so call now for your free 2023 no-obligation Medicare benefits review. Just call 800-614-5203. 800-614-5203.
The Athletic. Subscribe today.
A Scripps News exclusive interview with the nation's top hostage negotiator.
We're going to go into battle with the Russians here and have this negotiation and see what we can get done.
Go behind the scenes of bringing Americans home. Tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Scripps News Tonight.
It is Asian American and Pacific Islander Month, and Sesame Street has a new character to celebrate. TJ is the show's first Filipino character, and he was introduced earlier this month. Puppeteer and performer Yinan Shintu voices TJ, and TJ was created in part by Filipino-American and Oscar-nominated animator Bobby Pontia. Speaking of which, a very special treat today. We get to talk to the puppet's creator, Bobby Pontia, and Bobby is going to be joined by Rosemary Palacios, the Director of Talent Outreach, Inclusion, and Content Development for Sesame Street Workshop. Thank you both for being with us today. It's great to see you. So Bobby, you recently posted about this moment, about the creation of TJ. I want to go ahead and bring up your Instagram post. Tell me more about TJ, the inspiration behind the creation, where the name came from, and what inspired you to create a Filipino character.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I think Rosemary can attest to a lot of how TJ kind of came about in the first place. But once Rosemary reached out to me and with the assignment and the ask of, can you help us design a Filipino little boy Muppet? And I was like, oh my goodness, yes, of course. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity. And I was very, very fortunate to be partnering with Lewis Mitchell, one of the creative character design lead over at Sesame. And he was very gracious with his time. He reached out to me and was steadfast in his objectives for TJ to look and feel very Filipino. So he asked me a lot of smart questions, very inquisitive of, like, to me, what made a young person distinctively and authentically Filipino, both visually and personality-wise. So being on board with that authenticity and the need to make it authentic, I kind of reached back into my own life and drew inspiration on my friends, little boys. Their names were Max and Mateo. And in just the way their demeanor, their personality, as well as their physicality, skin tone, features, and kind of even down to the way he dresses was kind of pulled from, the little Filipino-American kids in my life that I knew. As well as our visits to the Philippines as well.
Yeah, I actually just got back from the Philippines a few weeks ago, so I'm right there with you. But I wanted to ask you something that I love about TJ is TJ doesn't have a Filipino accent, and TJ is actually learning how to speak Tagalog. So why did you decide to go in this direction with TJ?
Well, again, that would be a question for Rosemary, as she was there in the very beginning and conception of, like, bringing TJ on to Sesame Street. However, I can certainly relate to that. I grew up in the United States. My mom was born in the Philippines, was in the U.S. Navy, came to the States, and so I was born and raised here. So I can understand TJ's, like, struggles of not necessarily growing up with it and not necessarily spoken in the household. But for myself and a lot of Filipino Americans, like growing up in the 80s and 90s, we can certainly relate to, that kind of feeling of wanting to get closer to your culture, wanting to learn more about where you kind of come from. And his Lola, as he mentions, is the perfect conduit to make that bridge the gap for those generations for him. Yeah.
I love that. And I want to go ahead and bring in Rosemary right here. Rosemary, this is such a big moment, such a special moment. What does it mean to you to see this entire project come to fruition? And why did you decide that TJ was an important puppet to have on the show? I mean, there's already an Asian American character. I believe that you have a Korean character on the show. Why was it so important to you?
I mean, for the workshop, it was really important to be able to represent the breadth of the API diaspora. There's more than one kind of way to be Asian. And I think, when we were looking at the diaspora and the spectrum of skin tone representation, I think we felt it was important to make sure that there was some brown Asian representation in there as well. And being Filipino myself, I think that also helped bring some authenticity to the table. The decision for us to make TJ specifically second generation, I think also speaks to a lot of where maybe our audience viewers might see themselves not having an accent and wanting to reconnect after their parents might have been forced to assimilate a little more than they had to. So yeah, I think this is an opportunity for children to see themselves represented and know that the world is also here for them. And they can also heighten and build their own sense of identity and belonging and confidence like we showcase in this video.
And Rosemary, how has TJ been received so far? What kind of an impact do you think that TJ is going to have on younger generations that are non-Asian American?
I mean, TJ, the reception around TJ has been so wonderful and welcoming, and it really does feel like I liken it to a hug from the entire Filipino community, both overseas and domestically. And I do feel like even children who are non-Filipino might find a way to see themselves in how he's portrayed, whether it's, the color of his skin or wanting to connect with a deeper culture that you have in your family, any of those things, or just being open to learning more about someone else's culture. I think all of those things are an opportunity that comes about with a character like TJ.
And finally, a question that I want both of you to weigh in on, because May is AAPI Heritage Month. Bobby, I'll start with you. What do you make of the progress in regards to representation in the AAPI community? How far have we come? How much further do you believe the community has yet to go?
I think that's a great question. And I think from the entertainment point of view, we're living in Los Angeles and kind of working in movies and TV and film and everything like that. As the more Asian Americans start to kind of come into the industry, the entertainment industry, both on screen and behind the camera, that it's inevitable to sort of see these characters and these stories come to life and fruition on huge platforms like Sesame Street. So it's really encouraging. Actually, the LA, especially in Hollywood, there's a huge supportive community of Asian American writers, talent, producers that really kind of come together and support each other, and it's really encouraging to see.
And Rosemary, did you want to go ahead and weigh in?
Yeah, I do feel like, to Bobby's point, it's really wonderful seeing the community come together to really, showcase the strides that we've made and keep pushing the pendulum forward, so that way we can, fight for more representation and showing, again, the breadth of this community and culture, because we're not a single monolith and there is a variety and range of how to represent. So the more we can do it and the more voices we have in the mix, and the more we can show this beautiful diaspora that we have.
Yeah, hats off to both of you. It's so wonderful to see Bobby Pantia and Rosemary Palacios. Thank you so much for being here. Maraming salamat to both of you. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Coming up next on Scripps News Live, a man says that he is grateful for an everyday hero, his newspaper carrier, why he is now being hailed as a hero. We're going to explain next.